When we talk about villains or antagonists in video games, I don't think there is any other franchise that does it better than the Far Cry franchise. After the success of VAS in Far Cry 3, Ubisoft decided to put much more attention and emphasis on the main villain of each succeeding installment. Hell, one of my main complaints about Far Cry 4 was the fact that I felt that Pagan Ming was underused after giving such a fantastic performance. Furthermore, it seems that Ubisoft is focusing on making their villains the centerpiece of their games compared to the main protagonists, whereas in most Far Cry games the protagonist is more or less a blank slate or has near to no personality whatsoever, like AJ from Far Cry 4 or Takar from Far Cry Primal. Vaz, Pagan Ming, and Joseph Seed are probably the most common villains mentioned when discussing the best Far Cry villains. Still, there is one antagonist that has been left behind, or rather forgotten by the community, and this is the Jackal, whom I believe to be one of the most underrated Far Cry antagonists in the series. The reason is mainly because he's the complete opposite of modern Far Cry antagonists, and what makes the Jackal such a great antagonist is that he's so realistic. Much of what he says can be applied to the real world.
Every place is somebody's home, pal, but it doesn't stop people from going to war. I don't start wars, I didn't start this one. It seems like it's your fellow Africans that want each other dead. Besides, why should I give a shit about your home? Why should anyone? You want me to go somewhere else? So there's someone's home you don't give a shit about?
What if it was your home?
War is my home.
Whereas other Far Cry villains feel very, fictional. The Jackal, on the other hand, is a true nihilist with a pragmatic philosophy brought to life. And I think this is the key. The Jackal feels like a real person who exists in our world. This video will contain spoilers from Far Cry 2. So, the Jackal was the main antagonist in Far Cry 2, where the premise is that you play as a mercenary, who is a silent protagonist, and are tasked to enter this unnamed Central African country where a civil war has raged for several years, and your mission is to kill the Jackal, who has supplied both the warring factions with weapons. After catching malaria and being bedridden, you are woken up by the Jackal rummaging through your things, uncovering everything about you. The plans, passport, what you're here for, and now having failed the mission to kill the Jackal, you no longer have much incentive to kill him, and instead you start to work for the local warlords of each faction, doing any kind of dirty work, assassination, sabotage, destruction, mayhem, anything as long as you are paid. And you will meet the Jackal several times throughout the game. In terms of voice acting and performance, it's not that good. The speed of the dialogue is up to 1.5 for some reason, and there's not much emotion in the performance.
I'm still breathing and you're the one with malaria. You can tell them you tried, but that means fuck all, doesn't it? You're fired. You know it, and so do I. You had your shot, but now it's over. And since men like you only work for money, you're no longer my problem.
But why am I saying that he is such an underrated antagonist then? Well, it's due to what the Jackal is saying and the fact that he seems to change his mind and evolve just like you throughout the game. And the Jackal, who is a weapons dealer, has smuggled countless guns into the country, where thousands if not millions have died in this civil war. And it has been this way for years now. But after seeing firsthand how his actions have caused all of this misery, the Jackal decides to try and reprimand his sins. And this is not the first war-torn country he has smuggled weapons into. He's been doing this for 16 to 20 years. And the Jackal is a complicated man who has seen too much bloodshed and wants to end everything. The Jackal sees this war and all the people actively fighting in it as a form of cancer that will keep on taking, but it will never be enough. And when they are all gone, someone else will take their place as they are infected too with the same disease. Every cell and every person involved in the war is infected, and the only solution is to quarantine the patients. And the ones who are ultimately paying the price for all of this are the innocent civilians who are not actively participating in the war. And he has seen a lot of stuff. Men being lined up against the wall and executed, children whom have their hands or limbs cut off. Yeah, I think you probably know what happens to the women in war. And when you later meet the Jackal at the midpoint of the game, after having been betrayed by the faction leader who gave you the job to kill the opposing faction leader, you are betrayed and left for dead. You wake up with the Jackal treating your wound, more or less saving your life, and it's pretty clear that he has no intention of killing you. And I believe the reason why this is because he sees himself in you and how he used to be a merc in a past life. He knows exactly who you are, why you are doing all of this, and he probably wants you to see his point of view and understand how you killing soldiers or leaders will not stop the conflict. Instead, it only fuels it. The third time you meet him is after you have gotten the diamonds of one of the dead faction leaders as they were gathered to make a peace agreement. The Jackal sees all of this as a comedy act, as if the leaders would want peace. They only want privacy from what they are doing, and they want the outside world to stop paying attention to them so they can continue with their war and heinous crimes in privacy. But he says it's all going to stop, and he is the one that will stop all of this, and that they will curse his name for years. And it's pretty fascinating how Ubisoft handled complex subjects back in the day, as the only ones who are shown as victims in this game and conflict are the civilians. Even the outside world is not really helping. Just ordinary citizens from anywhere in the world, the US, Sweden, Germany, etc. As they want to help the people in the country. But an unknown consequence is that they actually only prolong the conflict by donating supplies such as food, water and medicine, which the warlords will steal, pile up and sell for a highly inflated price to the civilians, and prolonging a conflict where there is no end in sight. And it's the civilians that the Jackal truly care for, as he tells you at the prison later how most of the civilian population has already made it across the border to the neighboring countries, and how he is going to make an entire country disappear. But for all of this to happen, the population needs to go away because they are in the way, and the disease must be isolated to be destroyed. So more or less isolating all the soldiers in the country and let them kill each other while saving the civilian population. And he says that on the radio he hears people back home in the West say they wanna help daily, but they lie to themselves as they are not ready to do what is necessary to stop this conflict, which is something that most countries would be unable to do. And we have seen this many times happen in real life. Especially in Rwanda, where the UN troop station there evacuated, leaving hundreds of thousands dead, and the outside world did not stop the conflicts. Now, before we continue to the last and probably the most memorable scene in Far Cry 2, you can actually find tapes throughout the game in which the Jackal is interviewed by a journalist who is a returning side character throughout the game. And we have yet to determine precisely when these were recorded, but it was before the timeline of Far Cry 2, and these tapes shed light on precisely who the Jackal is and what his morals and motives are. And some of these quotes from the interview should be as memorable as the
"Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?"
And so throughout the tapes, the Jackal explains how he smuggles weapons into a country, be it over mountains, through the desert, and the only hard part is moving them inside the country, where you either need to bribe or kill someone to get them in. He also explains how he makes money selling weapons in an ongoing war, and later buy guns wherever there has been a ceasefire in those countries, creating a perfect circulation of arms throughout the world. And he sees selling weapons as just another commodity, something that could be compared with just selling, car parts or radios. The process is the same. You get up, you get on the phone, you meet with your clients, you make a delivery, and you get the payment. He is just doing what people have been doing for thousands of years, trading one thing for another. And he rightly points out how someone can try to attach morality to the trade when people who work in a gun factory in the States who are unionized, and how kids making wages in Bangladesh are not the people making 40 grand a year.
You start thinking too much about morality. That's insane.
The Jackal is also a truly neutral entity in this conflict, as he does not pick a side, and it's explained how he did it once, and it was a bad idea. First of all, it cut the profits in half and almost got him killed. You wanna sell to both sides to level the field and stabilize the market. If you draw out the conflict, you make more money. A big sale does not generate repeat business. So both the warring factions, in this country, APR and UFLL, are using the weapons. And now they are stockpiling, so less violence, more spending. And if you picked sides, fewer people would be displaced, but more would be dead, because it would be one-sided. He has seen the misery his weapons bring, as he witnessed just a kid who could not be older than 18 or 17, who had a shotgun across his lap and a dead APR soldier next to him. The kid just looked at the guy's leg and started to take his boots. He just looked tired, beaten down, ragged, retired, old.
Kid that age shouldn't look like that.
It's also sick that people who live in the UK, US, Canada and Sweden pay their taxes, which go to some remote piloted drone which fires a missile into a public market to kill some warlord. And sure, maybe prevents a war for another 6 months, and import prices for these countries remain low. It's not sick to arm people. It's instead sick that these countries are killing off leaders and dictators in protection of their own interests, and then calling it international justice. These people don't have these drones that can be used thousands of miles away. They don't have a war machine paid for with taxpayers' money. Hell, some of these countries don't even have governments. The Jackal sees the drone as the oppressor and the AK-47 as the great equalizer. His views on killing is also quite profound. And if you kill someone, is it better to do it clean with a bullet through the head? Or is it somewhat worse to chop up someone with an axe? And what if you have to kill 10 or 100 or 1,000? And what if doing this helps to save 1,000 or 10 people? Or just to save yourself? What is the measure of a man or of his murder? And by what insane calculus can we even try to answer questions like these? And should we even try? And the final question, remains. Why has he changed his mind now? He has been doing this stuff for 16 years. And it did not bother him before, so what changed? So there is a rumor in the game where one of the leaders and his henchmen discuss a rumor that the Jackal has cancer and is going to die in 3 months.
I hate cancer the months to do.
People say a lot of things.
I also heard that somebody was paid to come here and kill him.
Who, the Jackal? Come on, guy's an arms dealer. You'd want to kill a guy like that.
And just like many people who have done heinous actions or crimes, try and reprimand themselves when they know they're going to die. But I feel like this would just be, too simple, and it kind of ruins his character a little bit. I like the story of a man who has done awful things in his past, try to overcome his evil nature and try to do good. The last scene with the Jackal is one of the most profound ones in a Far Cry game. As the last of the native civilian population is trying to escape the country to its neighboring borders, and we're talking about millions of them. The Jackal gives you a choice whether to take a briefcase full of diamonds and see to it that the border guards will be bribed with said diamonds to let the refugees through. And after that, you put a bullet in your head to clean the last slates.
You or me is gonna put a bullet into his own head. I do both jobs myself, but there's not enough time.
And I 100% believe the Jackal would do this after having delivered the diamonds, because he just wants it all to end, to take accountability for all the death and destruction he has caused, and he sees himself as part of this cancer that spreads and kills anything it touches, so he needs to put a bullet through his brain, because if he lives, the cancer will spread. The other choice is setting off dynamite that will block the entrance to the valley. And these soldiers are following to try and force civilian population back into the country so they can use them as leverage towards the media and international community. And they will be unable to follow once you set off the dynamite. But the cord has been damaged and someone needs to set it off manually, which will kill the person. And this, some of the more classic tragic endings where one person stands behind to save the rest of the party, and there is no doubt that anyone would not survive this. The interesting aspect is how the Jackal sees you as a partner and relies on you to help me finish the conflicts. Of course you accept this and agree that you and the Jackal are both in this together, and you both are trying to cleanse yourself of your sins, but also dying in the process of this cleansing. The end though is quite open, as they never find the corpse of the Jackal, so he could still be alive. Well, unfortunately, Ubisoft does some awful stuff sometimes. And well, there is a NPC in Far Cry 5 who is more or less the Jackal, with the same voice actor and some throwaway lines for 5 seconds.
Everyone's got secrets they'll never tell. You heard of the Jackal, right? That arms dealer in Central Africa? Sure you have. Everyone has. Nobody knows what happened to him since his body was never found. I know. I wish I could tell you more, but the report won't be declassified until 2058.
He apparently survived Far Cry 2 unless he's, So, the Jackal might not be Far Cry's most famous antagonist, but to me, he sure is one of the most interesting ones, and I hope more people will talk about him when discussing the best Far Cry villain. So, let me know down in the comments which Far Cry villain is your favorite and why. And thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?